Good evening, everybody. My name is Anna Deering. I am the Managing Director of the Society to Preserve the Millvale Murals of Moxo Vanka. The Vanka Society is the independent nonprofit organization that works to save and share the 25 murals covering the interior of St. Nicholas Croatian Catholic Church in Millvale, painted by immigrant artist Moxo Vanka in 1937 and 1941. Easily described as not your typical church murals for those who haven't seen them. Vanka's images pay tribute to faith while expressing passionate beliefs and truths about social justice, injustice, the horrors of war, and cultural identity among an immigrant population. If you're just discovering the murals through this program, welcome. I hope you'll continue to your introduction at our website, vankamurals.org, or plan to come and take a tour on a Saturday or to arrange a private tour at another time. Tonight's conversation with artists involved in Artist Image Resources Golden Cage Portfolio Project is presented in partnership with Hiccup, Hemispheric Conversations Urban Art Project at the University of Pittsburgh. It is the second in what will become a recurring series entitled Other Voices, Other Walls. And through this series, we witness the ability of art to move, inspire, and provoke. Art being a catalyst for community engagement and education. And we're excited to join all of you in learning from and being inspired by our panelists and their creative efforts to express concerns and stimulate dialogue about critical social issues we're facing today. So before I turn it over and we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. First, we will have time for Q&A after the presentation, and you can populate, you can start, as questions occur to you, you can start to put them into the Q&A. And you can also upvote questions so we don't miss ones that are really important to a lot of people, but we'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible before we close tonight. You can also use the chat function to reach the panelists, and we'll respond there as well. We'd hope that you'll save the date for our third program on March 23rd. Through a discussion about the Pachamama mural in Millvale, we're going to explore the relationship between art, place, and ecology. So registration will open soon. I hope you'll plan to join us. It'll be same place, same time on the 23rd of March. And I hope you'll invite others to join us for that conversation. So thank you from the Vanka Society for being with us tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Caitlin Bruce, Associate Professor of Communication at the University of Pittsburgh, and artist, educator, and mom to be very soon, Aureen Cohen. And I'll let them introduce themselves, Hiccup, and our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. We're so pleased to have so many friends and neighbors and artists and creatives with us. My name is Caitlin. I'm an associate professor at Pitt and also the program coordinator for Hemispheric Conversations Urban Art Project, affectionately known as Hiccup because it's a really long title. Hiccup was founded by myself, Aureen Cohen, Shane Pilster, and run with Max Gonzalez. And it has the goal of fomenting conversations across borders and cultures through a focus on public art, focusing on muralism, graffiti, and street art specifically. These art movements have historically been vehicles for youth voice, activism, post-industrial and global solidarity, and they can generate spaces for encounter. Our programming involves youth street art workshops, artist residencies, and mural production, and public conversations like the one we plan to have tonight. We've long been focused on partnerships with Chicago, Mexico City, and León, Guanajuato, and we've produced murals and held workshops in Millvale and brought visiting artists and residents to see the Vanka murals. So it's a real privilege to continue to help curate this conversation. And I'll drop some of our social info and website in the chat later on. I'm so thrilled to be joined tonight by artists who have long been important forces and voices in Pittsburgh's various creative communities. Their work illuminates the power of collaborative art making to transform spaces and places, to create possibilities for solidarity, and to imagine more just futures. And so I'm going to introduce our panelists and my collaborator. Aureen is then going to moderate a conversation, and then we're going to open up to everyone else to talk with us. So Aureen is an artist, arts educator, and programmer based in Pittsburgh. She is co-founder and co-organizer of Hiccup. Texture, movement, material, and process are key elements of her artwork, wherein she attempts to bring viewers closer to the visceral or essential qualities of material and sites. She uses mediums of large-scale sculpture, painting, drawing, site-specific installation, public art, intervention, video, and performance. Her work often leads her to design possibilities that untangle or combine stories of people and place, endeavors that are often public-facing and collaborative and multidisciplinary. She received her MFA from Carnegie Mellon University and has had solo shows at Buffalo Art Studio, 907 Gallery, among other sites, collaborative exhibitions with Space Gallery, Brooklyn Army Terminal, Alloy, Flint Public Art Project, and residencies with Radiant Hall, among other locales. The organization that we're partnering with, who's the host for the topic of our conversation, is Artist Image Resource. Artist Image Resource is an artist-run, not-for-profit print and imaging organization established in 1996 to serve as a laboratory for artists, educators, and community. AIR's mission is to integrate the creation of fine art prints with educational programs that explore the role of the artist in contemporary culture. AIR's primary activities are to initiate and facilitate projects with professional artists and to create active laboratory environments where artists, students, and publics interact. AIR's fundamental interest is in how print and imaging processes are being used in broader contemporary art making practice and how these practices impact and reflect culture. Robert Beckman is an artist and educator living and working in Pittsburgh. He received an MFA in printmaking from Kent State University in Ohio, and in 1996, he co-founded Artist Image Resource. Beckman's work investigates how we create and communicate meaning and significance. He most often works with print and imaging processes and presents work in installation formats. Beckman has taught at Carnegie Mellon and Edinburgh Universities in Pennsylvania and has worked with several artists and arts organizations in developing projects, installations, and artist studio spaces in Pittsburgh. Maritza Mascara has been an artist all her life and a teaching artist since the age of 17 when she taught at the Baltimore Women's Detention Center. Printmaking also came into her life at a young age via high school and as an undergraduate at Maryland Institute College of Art, where she focused her print practice in making multiples that were never similar or the same. She continued these methods during her printmaking residency at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. She received her Master's of Fine Arts in Painting from the University of Pennsylvania, studying with Neil Welliver and Hitoshi Nakasato, two very gifted teachers, and during her residency at Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, where she studied with Agnes Martin and Joseph Campbell, this time becoming a key point in her focus and internalization of what art can mean to the world. Art is spirit calling, art is social change, art is living form, art is healer, art is lover, art is the universe and the fabric of life itself. For the past 30 years, Mascara's major projects live under one umbrella, which she calls the Human Liberation Project. Her activating, healing, and expanding the universe-focused work is created in her studios at Nine Pines and Ice House in Pittsburgh, and through teaching and listening practice of coescucha, taking part in the excavation, exposing, and exercising of all oppression through the work with the hashtag Not White Collective, of which she is a founding member, and creating art-making possibilities as a teaching artist for people living in challenging spaces such as detention homes, jails, hospitals, and elder care facilities. This work is supported by PCA&M, Pennsylvania Center for the Arts and Media. Maritza continues to explore ways to open up more voices towards human liberation and connection, and has currently decided to explore her work towards what will bring our focus into saving our planet from extinction, Earth. She likes it here. Bekezela Mguni is an artist, poet, doula, activist, and librarian. She is enough and plenty. Bekezela participated in the first Librarians and Archivists with Palestine delegation in June of 2013, a network of self-defined librarians, archivists, and information workers in solidarity with the Palestinian struggle for self-determination. She is the founder of the Black Unicorn Library and Archives Project, a queer Black feminist library and archive. Bekezela is also a studio member of Boom Concepts, which is a community space and gallery dedicated to the development of artists and creative entrepreneurs. She is also honored to work with the Dreams of Hope as the education program coordinator, director, leading the S-Cool program. Dreams of Hope affirms and uplifts the voices of LGBTQ youth through the arts by building a safer community for young queer and trans people in Pittsburgh. And Quayshawn Whitlock is an artist, educator, and business owner in Pittsburgh, currently holding teaching positions at the Andy Warhol Museum in the Education Department, as well as a resident artist at the Father Ryan Art Center at McKees Rocks, PA. As an interdisciplinary artist, his work is about the discovery and/or identity, representation, and struggle of Blackness, Blackness meaning the physical, mental, and emotional identity of the Black body, investigation, past, present, and the trends of the future. So I'd like to thank all of our panelists for being here and turn it over to Irene to facilitate our conversation.
And thank you for everybody for being here tonight. I'm really excited to bring all these artists together to talk about their work. Myself have a relationship with Artist Image Resource. I used to help them with program coordinating and education programs. And I think it was last summer that I was walking through the space and saw all the work that was being produced by all of you artists. And I was just really excited and energized by the collaborations that were happening. So I'm really excited to talk to you about the project. But first, I'm gonna turn it over to Bob Beckman to give a brief description of what the Golden Cage Project is and how it started. Sorry, Bob, you gotta unmute yourself.
Sorry. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Irene. You guys didn't get any of that. Thanks for having us. And I guess, Caitlin, I guess you kind of covered some of where Artist Image Resource is. But for those of you that don't know of us, we've been around. This marks the 25th year we've been in town. We're on the north side. And we have been doing kind of large kind of resident projects with artists to bring them in, work over the course of 12, 24 months, bring younger aspiring artists into the mix and kind of create a really kind of collaborative studio dynamic in the creation of kind of new work. You know, we kind of see the artists, the educator, the activists in a very similar light. A while back, we started trying to organize more portfolio projects that would engage more artists at one time in kind of more collaborative activities. You know, a couple of shout outs would be activist print project with the Warhol that kind of put some of the folks that are here and that have been in this project together. And also we got involved with Alicia Wormsley and Robert Hodge. Alicia, I think, was doing a project with the Carnegie, People Are the Light, a while back. This is when we got to know Robert Hodge, who's an artist in Houston. And Robert was kind of instrumental in helping us kind of frame the prompts for the Golden Cage Project. So we kind of are often, it was interesting hearing Caitlin talk about Maritza and the kind of variability of kind of where kind of print fits. We are constantly kind of playing with kind of print as language, as media, and trying to kind of find ways to kind of cross-pollinate how multiple artists are maybe in the space working. So you're seeing some of the work now. I mean, Becca Zelia, Quayshawn, Daryl Kinzel, Maritza Mosquera, Robert Williams, artist in New York City, and Robert Hodge in Houston are the 6 artists in this round. And we're working on ways to kind of continue with this. Daryl and Boom has been really supportive in some ways to kind of deepen and expand what we've been doing. So you're seeing, I think if you're seeing what I'm seeing right now, there's a Robert Hodge print. There's a couple of Robert Hodge prints. Quayshawn and Robert, we're kind of working on the one in the middle. The one with the fish is a Robert Williams print. The other one's a Daryl Kinzel print. The other shots here are really just kind of some working shots of the studio. So I'm not sure what all we're kind of running through on this, but these are a couple of images of Robert Williams. And then you've got some shots of we did an exhibition, gathering in February, right before the COVID. So again, another thing to kind of know is that the shop works in these large projects, and this project's been going on for probably 2 years. We're still finalizing some of the additioning on some of this stuff. And we've started this whole nother round with kind of Beck Azalea and Quay and Daryl in the building. But so you're seeing some shots of, kind of the active space as we were doing it. I think that there is also a shot later of Robert. There's some of Maritza's pieces. Again, I don't know if this stuff will come and go and what you're seeing. Here's some more of Daryl. This is just color studio shots of some things we were doing with Hodge, I think. This is a shot of some of Hodge's paintings that came out of some of this that were shown in Houston Museum of African American Culture. So I guess that gives you a sense of kind of where we were going with the kind of project. The portfolios, started for us a little bit in this kind of, race, religion, gender, and class. If it's not about that, what are we talking about? And then framing this into this golden cage got us moving. And it's been a pleasure. It's been long and kind of it continues to go, but we kind of like it that way. So I thank all of you guys, and I thank you guys for having us here to talk about it. You good, Aureen?
Thank you very much. That was awesome. Here's a really important resource, I think, in the Pittsburgh arts community. It helps to support many different artists coming together, whether they are printmakers to start with or learning how to print, and really expands the visions and sort of missions of each artist. And so I'm going to start with some questions for everyone, and it's going to be a real casual conversation. So again, AIR's mission is to explore the role of the artist in contemporary culture by providing a laboratory environment to expand the visions and messages through printmaking, through imagery, language, process, methods. And each of you work through different mediums, but have an ongoing relationship with printmaking. And I was curious on what that relationship is for you, the ongoing role of printmaking in your art and through your community action. Yeah, and how does the medium of printmaking expand your skill and your message?
Well, I can start a little bit about just by saying that right before we came on to this workshop, Bob and I were still working on some final pieces that need to be done and editioning and etc. So part of it has to do with communication. Like I'm not in my studio painting or drawing that piece that he and I have had a lot of conversations about. So it's part of community building and community work. And one thing that I feel like, I'm so old sometimes and so young sometimes. In 1996 is when I started looking for you. I had worked at the Fabric Workshop in Philadelphia. I was the education director there. And I was looking for a print shop in town. And I saw a little piece in Zenith Gallery that was really well printed. And I remember like walking through and saying, who is that? And someone said Portland Street Studios. So I looked for you, diligently.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to make prints and I was used to a community and I was really I'm always interested in print. I'm not interested, that's why I rewrote my bio for this piece, because I'm not interested in making 20 of them, even though this time we're doing that. My interest really is of the community building and the layering of everything, from paint to idea to collaboration. So we've known each other a long time.
Yes, we have known each other a long time. Done a lot of interesting work.
Yes, and it expanded my work. It really did expand my work.
I can share. So thanks for having us. And for me, screen printing has always been community centered. I was taught I'm sure I'd seen screen prints in my life, but I didn't realize what printing was until I came to Pittsburgh. I learned to screen print It's actually funny because we started learning to screen print tangentially from the Power Up Girls, which was a program that Mary Tremonti and Heather White ran at um, AIR, and in collaboration with I believe Andy Warhol, and those young women made posters for a conference that I used to organize with New Voices for Reproductive Justice called the King's Lux and Twists Environmental Reproductive Justice Conference. And so that's how I actually got connected to people who printed, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting and really cool. And they were using screen printing as a tool to give these young women different skill sets, but also a platform to connect with other community organizations. And I remember they made like a breastfeeding poster for the community birth circle, which I was a part of as a doula, and saw like other informational prints that they made. And I was really intrigued by it. And I learned to print at the Braddock Community Library. And I know that there was an initial relationship there. They actually connected with AIR when they were starting, just to see how to build and start up their studio. So I'm always think of myself as someone who's a community educated artist, always learning in that regard. And screen printing was really tied also to zine making for me. And as shared before that, I felt like it was like a democratic art form, like anyone could learn it. It was always an invitation. People were always sharing their skills with you. And you could really think about, what was it that I need to say? What is it that I want to communicate? And for me, I was excited about screen printing because, you could make a lot of something really inexpensively and share it with the community, share it widely. And as somebody who's interested in literacy and printing and, how we spread information, knowing that there was a tool available for people of various experiences and who had different levels of access to resources, I really connected to screen printing in that way. And then realizing, through connecting with other people, just how significant of a role it has played in, our social movements and as a part of our activism. So, and how key it became. So we made the first real printing project I did was for the 1 Billion Rising, which was a day to end violence against women. And it was like an international event. So we made tons of prints. And so I was really like, turned on there. And from there, I remember too, connecting with Maritza and Biko and their work. I didn't know how like complex printing could be and how creative people got with it. And so meeting Maritza and Biko and just observing them over time, I remember coming to AIR for the first time to one of their talks. And I still have the postcard for that show, which is so dear to me. And I remember it was a conversation. I remember my friend Etta was there, and I remember telling her, every time I see you, I want to talk to you. So that's where we became friends. But yeah, so printing has always been, I think, it's been a way to connect with others in the community. And I felt like it's always been a space where folks share. So that's what it's been for me. And I've been able to share with other people my love of printing. So it just always adds on,
Yeah.
And I'm always learning from other people too. So that's how it, keeps going.
I don't know, should I chime in now on this one?
Yes.
I would say, it's been a long road for me in AIR, been around for a while, various programs. I like a lot what Maritza was kind of going into about just the community behind it. That's probably where I fell in love, or at least where I kind of got bit by the, if you will, or fell into the rabbit hole. But essentially, I started with AIR through the Warhol, through the education department. We have a youth open studio program that's not really going on as effectively these days, but that was the first time that I was actually immersed to that type of environment for real. I kind of, especially in high school, I played a lot of sports, so it was really the only place where there was kind of a dedicated community of individuals who are like, you know, what kind of artwork are you working on? Or like, what kind of things are you doing? Or what's your practice like? And to an extent, that was like the first time I'd even had those conversations happen. And, you know, working at the Warhol was an amazing experience just to get involved with the arts, being at the age I was, just interning. And then to find a place like AIR was like, it was kind of like a dream come true for real. To start working there and then to actually have the Warhol kind of pay me to be in the studio to just assist the students and assist, you know, the development of screens and ideas, you know, and while I'm there, I get to kind of be constantly inspired by, you know, I mean, the Catholic students and just different students from Pittsburgh Public Schools are creating amazing work all the time, you know what I mean, just through the work they have to do through school, but just on their free time. So it was, in essence, kind of keeping me on my toes or even making me realize that like this was possible or this was something that I could really invest my time into. But being in the arts, really, I wasn't a printmaker all that much. I did a lot of drawing, a little bit of illustration here and there, like mainly 2D stuff. And working at the Warhol is really where I got influenced. We used to do a lot of just the pop portrait workshops, breaking down Warhol's technique and having that as this baseline of how we can talk about anything, you know, how we can talk about just this tool of screen printing can be used as a conversation to talk about social injustice. It can be used as a tool to talk about community. It can be used as a tool just to talk about color theory. It can talk about, you know, texture and how something falls on a piece of paper as opposed to how it falls on a piece of canvas. And like, you know, as well, all these conversations to someone who's even like 7 or 8 years old, this stuff is still interesting. And like, you know, when you pull a silk screen, it's magical and you kind of immediately capture someone's attention. All that stuff is incredible. You know what I mean? As well as Ms. Becca said, that, you know, this idea of using the screen as a tool, as a paintbrush is everything to me. It's not really just this machine-like process that Warhol likes to talk about so often, but it is a lot more than that. But yeah, I mean, I've been around AIR a long time. I'm sure Bob could talk about it a little bit. I mean, it's truly a blessing, honestly. I mean, I feel like just seeing artists and educators come through in the open studio, outside of Youth Open Studio, kind of the more established artists or, you know, the bands or just the friends of friends who come and see the studio space flow. That is something I think about every single day. Like, with COVID and like with this new social climate that we have, that's not something that we might ever see again. You know, to kind of be in the studio with just individuals creating and like, you know, I mean, not necessarily competing or like, you know, talking about, you know, I'm doing something better than you're doing, but at the same time, just ideas flowing. And, you know what I mean? It's just an environment that is unlike anywhere else. And I have to say, AIR does it probably better than most. Space, there's a lot of people, it's a big family, a long history. And I mean, just to even be involved with it in any capacity has been amazing.
Yeah. I want to say something about the family thing, you know, just the memories, like when we did have a trial one of these, and it felt like every person that popped up was like, oh God, I love them. I love their work. I love their substance. I love everything that they do. And that's part of AIR, I think. Part of what, I think that's what I meant when I was looking for a print shop, you know, like I was looking for quality. I wasn't looking for these beautiful, well-designed things. I was looking for quality of community. And I remember one of the first programs that Bob and I programmed, we said, well, if it's just you and me, that'll be fine, you know? And in I think we called it family. And it was about, you know, 20 people came in and we were so surprised. And from then it has grown. I don't think anyone I don't know, I mean, it's gonna be just me, but I don't think anyone in Pittsburgh has not seen something that has been printed at Art as an Image Resource. You know, whether they know it or not, it's something, it's out there. And I do think that it inspired other young shops to pop up. You know, it came out of AIR. So it's good that it's like 25. I feel like, oh, what a year. Great, you know, to have this talk now.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think that was kind of, you know, the idea on the front end was resource. You know, there weren't a lot of places where you could kind of access, just kind of go, you know, and to keep it kind of broad so that it shifts. And it's really just the people that are through there, and they're different, you know. I mean, there were a couple of shout outs to Heather White. Heather White early on was, you know, an awful lot of the youth stuff that's going on, you know, it's all about that. And it's fascinating to me to kind of watch some of this stuff, how people circle back around and come in and come out, you know, it's really kind of a blessing.
Sensei White.
And I would say too that like just to add on, like the people that you meet in this space are incredible human beings. Like anyone that's ever helped me in like screen printing realm is dear to me in some real way. Like, wow, I'm like, you taught me, you were patient with me, you like inspired me. You know, so it's been really profound, like the types of relationships that were built. So I definitely have a lot of appreciation for that.
Again, and too bad Felix is teaching down in West Virginia, but Felix is the latest man who's really kind of supporting the crew here. And you know, the other thing crossed my mind too, Quay, was the conversations that we had about when Hodge was in. The one Hodge has been back and forth. Robert Hodge in from Houston a couple of different times, but that last round, man, in for 2 or 3 weeks when we crashed that whole studio. And like you had mentioned, you were talking about working with different artists and the kind of influences, you know, and that struck me when conversations that we had. I don't know if you could say a little bit something about working with Robert.
I'll say something. Am I still muted? Can you hear me? Right now?
You're good.
I mean, it was, where do you even start? As Bob had mentioned, we had a conversation just essentially like, you know, AIR does create this environment of, you know, allowing accessibility to the arts, but as well, the family is large, but the skill and kind of the expertise is masterful. There's so much different backgrounds in play from, you know what I mean, as Noreen had mentioned as well, artists who not necessarily have had a background in print who have come to AIR and kind of learned some of the things. And even outside of Open Studio, just kind of meeting people on a more official sense of having an artist come in. And at the time with Robert Hodge, I was actually working at AIR. I was actually on the team, which was kind of a different setup. I didn't actually have to kind of sneak in or necessarily have to wait for Open Studio, I guess, to meet an artist. But with Robert Hodge coming in, the platform essentially, as Bob mentioned, had already been set up. When the residency, the first time of last year he came, I kind of missed him. I was able to like bounce my head in and just say hi and like kind of say what's up, maybe meet him a little bit, ask about his background. And I just couldn't wait essentially for him to come back around. Working with other artists like Stephen Hoffman and yeah, I mean, just the different folks who come in, it to me seems like just the utmost and perfect opportunity just to learn. And, you know, especially with AIR and with the diverse assets of printmaking, it is just a lot of cultivating this knowledge, you know, whether you want to try different things, the versatility of the methods. And I've learned a lot from the folks at AIR. A lot of people from Heather to Bob have shared so much with me. So, you know, to actually work alongside an artist like that, like Robert or like Bob, like Heather, is incredible. And you know what I mean? It's happened in various scales, in various capacities. But with Robert, he came in, and you know, the man, he likes to work. He moves fast. He was coming in sometimes at 12 o'clock. Sometimes he'd come in the morning, and he'd just be there all day. Maybe it'd be a couple hours of watching a podcast. Maybe it's a couple hours of just painting. But you know, he essentially would just get these bursts of like momentum and innovation. And whether it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the morning, like we were going. And you know, a lot of those pictures that were captured earlier in the PowerPoint didn't even nearly kind of wrap up just the energy that was happening in that room. Just a lot of music, of course, playing, but like a lot of just ideas flowing, things just going up on the wall. Decisions just kind of organically happen. And a lot of essences, I guess it's how I imagine like a Warhol factory setting, and even like maybe like the Warhol Basquiat flow that they may have had, but like almost even more dynamic than that. I mean, it was truly incredible. I mean, this as well, this is an artist who, as far as I could tell, as far as I was able to experience, he was kind of like on this more successful platform, you know what I mean? And like me being a little bit younger, me being just trying to grow, the struggling artist. I mean, this is where I want to learn. These are kind of the things, these are people I want to, you know, experience with. And to see him in there was beyond inspiring. You know what I mean? To be in there with an artist like that. We actually worked sometimes for like 6 hours, and then we would like go to the movies, like watch a movie and then just go straight back to the studio and just like keep on working. And, you know, a lot of great pieces came out of that. And even the pictures that were captured in that PowerPoint, those pieces look like they're, you know, 16 by 20, but they're actually 6 foot, you know, 6 foot and above. So they're very large canvas pieces. I mean, that was in a lot of ways, maybe the best experience I've ever had in a collaboration, honestly. I mean, that was next level. It was beyond next level. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, being around, I was around that summer when Robert Hodge was in town, and like, the energy was just like infectious. And like the collaborations, I think opened up a lot of people's eyes to possibilities, which is really exciting. And even that's what I saw when I saw all of your work, kind of like all the different screens, and then like the transparencies and layers of the different prints. And it's just so interesting. Like, you know, a lot of artists just sort of like hole up in their studios and like make their own work and like, this is it. But there's that element that the tool of printmaking lends itself to that process of collaboration. So I would love to hear about each of your images that you're using through the Golden Cage, individually, and then what that process is like to open up your space, your vision, your worlds, and like layer and multiply, and like how does that change your message? How does it create a whole new message through the work? Anyone?
Okay, we're just going around. My piece is called Vida Yawa, and it has really, it's got a lot of layers, thinking about layers. There's a lot of layers into it. I was invited by the, Pittsburgh Print Group, I'm part of that. And we were invited to the Morgan Conservatory in Cleveland to make paper. And one of the things that I really, like I said in my little bio anyway, I really am very concerned about food and food justice, and also the conservation of our earth. And I can go on forever, so I'm kind of like editing myself already. But what I really want to do is I want to call to knowledge the idea that really we are having some food shortages in the world because of colonization, and because we're so addicted to lithium, and because we really are, just because the world's heating up. There are many layers of that, of problems in the world for, for at least what I'm thinking right now for food, for Vida Yawa. What I did is plantain is a weed that grows in your backyard. You always mow it, you always pick it, it's really hard. And plantain has one of the highest quality of minerals in the world. And every plant has almost 1 billion seeds. So each plant has 1 billion more plants. And if at all, any kind of country, person, community goes hungry, if you have plantain, not only do you have a meal for thousands of days, you also have a replanting of nourishment. So it could be what could save our life. Oh, thanks. So what I did at the Morgan Conservatory is I embedded plantain into paper. And the idea is an installation, earlier on, before anybody was on, at AIR, I'm going to print that earth image onto the circles. I'm pointing like you see me, onto the circle paper, the handmade paper. The prints are on the left-hand side, and the actual prints are on the paper making is on the right-hand side. And my idea is for, I want to have a wall exhibition of these discs alongside water that you would buy but not get, but I would mail that disc to areas with the water, to areas that are starving, people are starving all over South America, all over Africa, all over the North America. So there's something to that level about printmaking and layering, and a lot of my, actually AIR was one of the first places, I've done it other places, that AIR with Men's Lives in 1999 was the first place I have my installations. They're always alongside dialogues, like the one that Becky Zala was mentioning. The one with Bika was called Yours and Mine, talking our history. And this one is called Vida Yawa. And I want to just pay attention when the exhibition goes up. After we print those discs, Bob, the earth on those discs, they're going to go up as an installation. And then I'm going to offer dialogues in various places, in at least to begin with, in this country. So I really want to, I want people to know about plantain. I want people to know about the hunger. Also, the UN, I'm going to read it because I didn't want to get this wrong. The UN just proposed that by 2050, we will have 9.8 billion people on this earth. And that will take 3 Earths to feed. So it is my stuff. I love my work, just so you know, but it's beautiful, but it has these other contents that I want to bring into the conversation. And just to know, not to alarm people, but to just know some of the things that we're doing might really be affecting a lot of other people on this earth and the earth itself. So yeah, so there'll be a dialogue and an exhibition. And one of the things that I wanted to say is when, like for instance, the one that you're looking at, the left-hand side, that blue, I love that blue. Don't take away that blue from me. That blue is like, I love that blue. And then it got printed over like all the, Becca's piece and Diaz piece and Cuellar piece. And it looked to me like when it got onto Cuellar piece, I was really talking about the hunger that's happening in Africa. And it took it to a different level because it was so focused, and it was like the birthing of a whole different image. And that I really, really enjoyed, like the idea that you and I collaborated without collaborating at all. And we were talking about actually the same kind of stuff, the racism that happens, the colonization, the just of what we want for that country, for all the countries. So I really like that layering effect. I don't know if you saw it and you liked it, but I liked it a lot.
Right on. No, I seen some stuff playing around just with the screens.
Good.
Well, I guess that must be that's a perfect transition, honestly. I guess my piece, I named it Residence. I wasn't really sure what the title, I have to master with titles or anything like that. But the piece itself was inspired by a art residency, I guess a collaboration that Air Artist Image Resource did with the Arsenal Elementary School. We did I guess this started, I think that was April, or was it April, May? No, I guess that wasn't, it was early school year of last year before COVID happened. That we did with Evan Rumble's class. I'm sure you guys remember, but
yeah, Oreen was in on that.
Yeah, Oreen was in on that. So that was an interesting experience that we were all kind of in the same collaboration. But that was a pretty cool, at least my first experience having a in-school residency where we were actually in the classroom every week, multiple times a week, I guess sometimes multiple times a week with the class. It was a 2nd and 3rd grade class of Evan Rumble's. And essentially we were kind of bringing print to this conversation that they have at Arsenal. Arsenal's elementary school is one of the, I think it's the region's largest English learning school for Pittsburgh Public Schools. So there's a lot, I believe there's 14 countries and 18 languages represented amongst their student body of elementary school. So it was just within our classroom, there were a lot of individuals, who are not only never even seen screen printing, never even heard of it, never even imagined that something like this would be happening in their class. But it was an incredible experience. And essentially in the class, there was this weird brown paper cutout of the continent Africa in the classroom, taped up onto the window. And for whatever reason, I didn't even get a chance to ask Mr. Rumble why that was the case or what that was inspired for. But one of the days of class, there was a interesting little light shining through the paper and allowed for the window grate to actually echo through the brown paper. So I just grabbed a little photo, did some editing outside of Photoshop, and then we broke it down into a CMYK print, which is a 4-color cyan, magenta, yellow, black print. And the image itself is a lot happening. I guess it is, it does kind of attract your attention to Africa, but a lot of my work, I like to play with the CMYK as this paintbrush, as this tool, because there's just so many different things that you can do with not only the levels of color to get these different hues. Of course, this isn't the way the photograph looked, or this isn't the way it looked in the classroom in any way, shape, or form. So, just being able to, I guess, kind of temper with reality a little bit, but just the different screens, having 4 different screens is like having kind of these 4 different, I guess, assets in your tool brush or in your utility belt, and to actually change out, how the layers are falling, how the colors are falling, even how the transparency of the colors fall through those layers is just an endless conversation in itself. and something that I just love to do with print. And this piece kind of spoke not only to the conversation we were having with Golden Cage, but it was a perfect piece essentially to play around with that experimentation as well. But I mean, I do love it. I do love it a lot. It is it's interesting to continue to work with. I love what you said, Ms. Rita, about just actually layering more things onto it, because that's like the only thing, one of the main things I can think about whenever I see it, is just, what else can I really, how can that become maybe another level of texture for an installation, maybe a background kind of thing. Originally, we wanted to emboss that print to actually have the Africa kind of come off of the page a little bit, but timing and stuff like that didn't necessarily work out. But yeah, it's a piece that speaks to too many things in a lot of ways. And it was striking to me to see that in the classroom. I believe it's somewhat striking to people to see it in the gallery space, maybe for whatever reason. That's a conversation in itself, but it definitely invokes, where were you? What's going on with this? A lot of times people are not expecting the answer that was, based off of a photograph. So it's always interesting to just get into the conversation of the piece.
I appreciate the title on that, Quay. I was wondering where that came from that day that you signed. And also kind of Ricardo Ruiz is a shout out on that project, right? We did a lot of work with Ricardo Ruiz, Corpus Christi. I think he's a young artist working out of Virginia now.
Amen. Ricardo was essentially the driving theme for the workshop. He actually was able to do a little FaceTime call with the class. Right. But all said, it was an incredible experience. I still see those kids today, like just walking around, like even like mask on and everything. They're like, "Oh, screen printing guy, screen printing Q."
Mr. Q.
Is that real for real? So I mean, it's definitely an awesome thing, and I mean that trickles down into like why we love to do this, or at least why I love to do this. Is it's kind of about building this community, but it's about the accessibility of printmaking is like speaks for itself. I mean, it's incredibly interesting to see. It's a beautiful thing to watch. So it helps in all ages, and it's like an easy tool to just open up the door, I guess, to where you might want to take your art practice. Transition on, but talking too long. I'm off.
Mhm.
Becca Zayla, would you like to share anything about your imagery?
Sure, thank you. And I guess I did notice someone asked something in the chat that I thought was interesting, and it made me think of someone who I think was one of the people who reminded me that I was creative and could be an artist. And I think it speaks to why printmaking lends itself to these types of collaborations, because it is an invitation to anyone, even if they don't think they're an artist, right? To say you have the capacity, the ability, the potential to create. And a lot of us, Ayana Moore was who has done work at AIR and who used to live in Pittsburgh. One of the things that she told me one time was that she believes everybody is an artist and we're taught out of it. And that always stuck with me, it stayed with me forever. And so I think that printmaking is one of those ways that you can return to your creative truth, your creative origin, and it has helped me to have that place in my life where I can say I can still access my creativity, even though I didn't go to art school, or I'm not taught this way, or I'm not this, but there's ways that I can connect to my creativity and my creative spirit. And I think that's the invitation that printmaking offers everybody. And it is accessible because you can teach anyone to do it, and you can invite anyone to do it. So that's how I think of it. But this piece is called The Uses of the Erotic in honor of Audre Lorde. And it's a part of a series of work that I've been working on, that I've been for a few years now, that is the Spirit series that creates spiritual iconography for Black women that have impacted my life, as well as the lives of many people around the world and generations around the world. And Audre Lorde is definitely a special and dear ancestor to me. And the uses of the erotic is a really significant essay that I think everyone should read. And, I encourage you to, if you haven't learned about Audre Lorde, please Google her, please look up her work, please read her books, please read her poems, and just learn more. We have a lot of really rich history right here in Pittsburgh. One of my dear mentors and friends, her name is Ada Gay Griffin. She's from Washington, Pennsylvania. She created a powerful documentary, A Litany for Survival, in collaboration with Michelle Parkerson. And so she's from right here in Pittsburgh, right here in Washington, PA, about Audre Lorde's life. And, she's a really significant figure. So I encourage everybody to learn about her, because her life and the way that she lived her life and the way that she wrote about her life and her ideas we have all benefited from it, whether we know it or not, just in terms of how she has impacted the culture. And I'll just say, this essay is significant because it really talks about our capacity to feel and how the erotic opens up that as a portal and a channel for us, and once we realize and have felt our capacity to feel, joy, liberation, the greatness of ourselves, it's damn near impossible to settle for anything less, and I feel like that is a wonderful reminder for all of us in these times when we're encouraged to become accustomed to things where, we could just take what we can get. And I think in liberation movements, it asks us to be visionary. We're asked to be dreamers. We're asked to be more thoughtful. The artist's imagination is the powerful tool. What I've been able to experience in my imagination and the feeling that like music gives me. And, she talks a lot about just how the creative world can open up our experience and our bodies. And once we have that in us, we talk about cellular memory a lot in our work. Once we have that knowing, that embodied knowing in us, it's really difficult to accept anything else. And I think it goes back to the golden cage. When we think about the golden cage and what that project was really focusing on, it is speaking about like what it means to live in like a gilded cage, right? Like we live in the trappings of capitalism and we can be, comfortable in that, but yet we're not free. So once that cage is open, once the door to that cage is open, it could be gold and laid out and opulent, but once it's open and we've touched the sky, once you've experienced, the vastness and expansiveness and endlessness of the sky, do you want to be in a golden cage anymore? I think not. And I'm just hoping in my lifetime that I can access that feeling within myself, because there's a lot of external forces, a lot of, generational trauma, a lot that works to keep me from not feeling free and from not embodying my sense of freedom. So this piece, there's a space around, speaking to other types of iconography that are popular visibly, in terms of like the Virgin Mary and the Virgin Guadalupe, and thinking about that type of iconography that's recognizable to people, but then flipping it and building upon it, because I've started to, just create more in terms of the series to build onto it. And I'm really grateful for the folks who assisted me throughout the way, in trying to bring my vision into a reality. And I think that's what's been cool about printmaking is that you say to folks, hey, I'm thinking about this, I'm interested in trying this. And folks are willing to help you explore the tools that could help you bring it into fruition. And so you don't have to know everything. You can learn, you can be willing, if you're open to learning, people are willing to share with you. And I'm just, that's what I've found to be always like, it's been, not to say that it's safe, because you know how sometimes you don't want to try something new, you're afraid that you'll make a mistake. It's not that it's safe, but it has definitely felt encouraging. You can make mistakes, you can be curious, you can experiment, you can explore. But my piece really is a way for me to lift up the legacy of Audre Lorde in my life as well as in the world, and the ways that I've seen, her legacy impact so many people that, are just prolific in the world, and to continue to lift up her name and the name of all, of Black women, Black femmes, Black queer and trans people, who have really shaped how we think about freedom. And I think, the essay itself is something that I encourage people to visit for their personal edification, their own soul satisfaction, and as a reminder, because we can live in, fairly numbing space, and, the erotic, what turns us on, right? What makes us know we're alive, what gets our blood rolling is not only about like a sense of like, quote unquote, sexual, it's not only lives in the sexual realm, but the sexual realm is the creative realm, that is creative energy always. And so it's nothing to be ashamed of or to turn away from, but to realize like how much it is a part of our lives, so when we are tapped into what makes us feel alive, that's a really profound way to live, and a really embodied way for us to like think about, striving to be within ourselves. So that's something that I need reminders of. So that's why I try to share that with other people. So that's what I'll share about this piece.
No wonder I love you.
Yeah, I agree. And that whole series of work is great. I just saw pics of it downtown, Gory. I think you were going to kind of move to kind of that show down there, but that whole series is great. And it's really kind of interesting to see them see them on the street,
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you can really tell the printmaking, we were talking about like transparencies and layers, and like the color choices that you all chose, like Maritza, you're like, oh, that blue, don't take away that blue, and the rainbows and the reds and the yellows on your work, Pakazela, and the like really intentional like transparencies and like overlays in your work, Quayshawn, like, I mean, all just really really thoughtful, and really sort of brings together like a method for healing, revealing, and confrontation even. I know Daryl's not here to discuss his work, but definitely a lot of confrontation there. And so Bob, you're mentioning the work that's downtown right now, the exhibition called Constellations, curated by Taranay Dia, and where I think it takes up a few different storefronts by different artists. And then also at Space Gallery, the Not White Collective has an installation up as well. And I wonder how these prints are moving outside of artist imagery source now. And printmaking is about the circulation of imagery, reproduction, and I'm just curious about how these artworks existing outside of the print laboratory help to create a sense of place, help to create a sense of belonging for people, like whether they go intentionally downtown to take a look at the work or passerby, how might that affect them? And that's my last question for tonight. And then we're going to open up for Q&A. So.
Well, I'll just share quickly. Thank you. I went down to see it on Saturday, and it does make me smile because it was really nice to see the work at that scale, and it felt very it felt like an honor, and it was very humbling. It's on I was just very grateful, and one of the things I was thinking was how we remove that. What is it, the Stephen Foster Memorial, and we were talking, the community's talking like, oh, we need to, replace it with like a statue or something else. And I had this vision once when I was trying to do something at the library. I was like, oh, well, it'd be great if I could create my own like monuments to Black women. So I was just like, yeah. And I was thinking about the Erykah Badu song, like how, they won't be naming any buildings after me. And I was like, oh, wow, actually put up a series of Black women on a full city block in Pittsburgh. That's actually a thing, even though it kind of happened unexpectedly. And I'm like, in my own way, it felt like one step towards just those elements of, monument building. And, I'm just thinking too about the future of artists being able to reflect appreciation of people in their communities and being able to have space in their communities to do that, so where can we see in Pittsburgh, reflections of the people who have shaped this place, that have affirmed us, so where can I see the work of, and I think people have talked about like Selma Burke, who created space for artists, a Black woman who literally in everybody's pocket, her work, you know what I'm saying, as a sculptor artist. And it's just like, where do we see in our communities the people who have shaped them, and we shouldn't see, not that we shouldn't see monuments. Well, this is what I'm gonna just say it. We don't need to see monuments to genocide. We can see monuments to creators, people who have, honor their community members by like being a part of their community, sharing of themselves, also receiving, being poured into. And so I just, we're going to be ancestors at some point. And the way that we've done it as a civilization, as human beings, to honor each other is through our, our objects. So who are we going to remember and how will we do it? So, I think in terms of placemaking and placekeeping, it's important to, and support artists to be able to like recognize the folks that they see. That's what August Wilson did. He's created a monument in the literary canon to the people of the Hill District. It's nice to see, other artists have an opportunity to document the lives of people in Pittsburgh and lift them up. That's how we'll remember it. So I don't know if I'm going too far off, but I just think like that's one way that printmakers get an opportunity as well to do what is necessary to have access to that platform. Because I might not have like a ton of marble, but I have this work and an opportunity, and that's gonna be my platform, and that's how I'll engage, and I'm like, oh, I have created in my own way a small monument to the legacy of Black women in Pittsburgh, and there's more work to be done that we could build on.
Yeah, it seems to me like it's the beginning of that kind of it's not the beginning of that kind of action in Pittsburgh. I think that AIR did that whole thing on the north side on all the windows many years ago. But the thing that I'm really activated by what you're saying, because Zayla, and about what it is I'm very excited to have the 13 women in the Not White Collective represented. Here are women from the global majority. We're not a minority. All of us are the global majority. And then once we turn language around, and then you can read some of our manifesto, even some of the text. Like, I'm so happy that the text and the image exist. And it is that guy, like I know that I've been by Space Gallery, and there are all these people just walking around. And I think that the power of even the posters there at the August Wilson Center. So right now, it feels like the energy system that's downtown, it seems to me that it is this honoring of human creativity, of human beings, of a human connection, of voice. I think that the voice that you're having, I mean, I really love that the Virgin of Guadalupe connected to the women that you've printed. I have one of those prints. I love them. Anyway, I think that our juxtaposition as artists of the many layers that we're representing and what we represent here in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is one of the things that someone said in some recent talk is like, we can live here. Maybe we talked, you know, we can afford to live here. Oh my God, we have an incredible print shop. We have a few of them actually. You know, we have also these people who are really thinking, well, they can think better. People can always think better and more forward movement and more of that cell intelligence and love, you know, for yourself and for your community that could always expand. But right now that these exhibits are up in those really large windows downtown, make that space so so powerful. It is representing, I'm just gonna say again, it's representing the global majority that lives here in Pittsburgh and has for many, many years. I mean, this is the longest place I've ever lived. And it's like, for a long time, I was the only Latina ever, anywhere, you know, looking around. And I really think that, thinking about you, Quay, that school, I teach at some of those schools too. I'm always so like, 18 languages in my class. I'm so excited. And then that's represented and that's represented. And that's the world I want to live in. I want to, one that we care for each other and show that power of image and the power of person. I'm very interested in portrait and voice always. So it'll be interesting to have one of my dialogues. What do you think about this, Bob? One of my dialogues outside in the street, right? I always have those dialogues in galleries, in
Yeah, absolutely.
schools,
Absolutely.
in places that are like confined and more managed. Maybe I'll have my next one on the streets, right in front of Space Gallery.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I need help. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you, everybody, for your responses. I don't know, Quay, if you want to throw in or not. But yeah, if not, we have lots of questions.
I mean, so I guess maybe I could talk a little bit about just transition of things now. I think right now we're working on how the conversation will continue. At least personally for me, there is an ongoing little residency, I guess, between myself, Becca Zayla, and Daryl in the studio, you know, actually revisiting a lot of these pieces, a lot of these conversations, but, you know, seeing kind of what's next in a lot of instances. The piece itself, I mean, it'd be awesome to have it out in the world. It's sharing in bits and pieces, but, you know, I mean, we'll see.
Great. Awesome. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for all of your questions and or your responses. Really beautiful and poetic way of thinking about printmaking and thinking about collaboration and your imagery. And I just really appreciate the introspection into the work. So we're going to open up for Q&A, and some people in the chat have put some in there. So I don't know, Caitlin, would you like to run the Q&A?
Sure. Yeah, there are a lot of great questions. So, well, maybe we could just go in order, unless, you know, people feel really passionate about a particular question. As Anna said, you can upvote them. So there's a technical question from Tanya to Bob about when you were at Kent State.
What is that question? Where are we talking about?
I don't know. They're asking when were you at Kent State?
When? Oh,
When?
God, I spent way too much time in Kent, Akron. You know, I was in Cleveland. I got out of there. I started coming back from there into Pittsburgh and spent some time in New York and Chicago bouncing around, but was based here in about 86, 85, 86. So I got out of Kent right before that.
Thanks, Bob. Julia has a question, I think, for Quayshawn about whether or not you've collaborated with artists in Africa. Well, because your project was about the silhouette of the continent.
I guess that's a yes and no. I have a close friend of mine from school who spent a lot of time in Africa after, like, once he graduated from Lehigh University, he went to school in, essentially investigating a little bit more in graduate programs, but as well, he spent his summers in Ghana and then he would bounce from like Ghana to Japan. So, I guess we had a little bit of conversation in that regard and we kind of built a collaboration now. And I've actually started using that piece to open up our collaboration, but not necessarily like directly in any means of reaching out to an artist who's creating work or has a building practice in Africa. But I would love to. It'd be an awesome thing.
Okay, the next question is from Becky. And I think this was partially answered, but I imagine other folks might have more things to say. What do you think it is about printmaking specifically that lends itself to these kinds of collaborations and to these conversations with the community and sharing your ideas?
I mean, I always go to my kind of, go-to that print really is, the setting up the shop was really just all kind of metaphor. It's how we stabilize and disseminate meaning. I mean, this has been the story from the beginning, from kind of making marks onto something that you made two of them and gave one to somebody else, kind of stabilizing. It isn't just these oral traditions, it's something else. There's an awful lot of room for interpretation, but it is disseminable, so it's kind of, so that idea kind of sticks with me through the whole thing. It's really kind of language stuff. So all of that is very conducive to kind of how we've shifted that. And again, the way we kind of structured the shop, it moves from relief to intaglio to lithography to screen printing to photography to digital print. These things are just developments in what is essentially one kind of language, that is of print, and it creates the possibility of dissemination. So we can do that on our phones now. We're doing it here. It's very different, but the metaphor and the kind of foundational aspects of that really kind of pretty interesting and pretty kind of, so print provides access into that. So, and once you start opening that up to think of it, as a more plastics part of the kind of generative thing, not just the reproductive part, not just the dissemination, but how these components are being used in a really kind of plastic way, that's when it becomes really, really interesting. But as a vehicle, it's really is pretty potent, I
just want to say a short story because I think this is part of the power of printmaking. Actually, through Arts Midwest and Artists Image Resource, I got to work in Santiago, Chile, Taller 99. Teresa Varner and I went there. And when I was asking, I bring storytelling to a lot of everywhere. Anyway, we were talking about how your body was affected by the government. And one of the women who had really problems with their knees, her story had that they had just printed in and anti-Pinochet posters. And they knew they were really powerful. And when she went to her house, or whether they weren't they knew it was powerful, but they were against the law, they could get killed. She went to her house and the police were standing right in front of her door. And she stopped, she stopped short, like she just stopped. And since then, her knees had hurt so much and she had never really healed from that. And thinking about that whole thing, the cell holds story, that print also has that story. So it has the power to be disseminated, like you were saying, Bob, but in such a large way, that they can just go ahead. And the press is powerful. People always say the press is powerful, and it is. They printed all these posters. She stopped short. She has the pain in her knees still. I mean, she's about 65. But what she remembers is putting those posters up and getting her voice and the voice of the artist and the protesters out there. And, we've all talked a little bit about that, but that dissemination of power is also really collaborative. It's very human.
Does anyone else want to chime in about that question before we move on to the next one? Okay, great. All right, so we have a question from Rachel, and I think it's prompted by your discussion about printmaking with the Arsenal students, Quayshawn. And she notes that she read that 6 to 8 is one of the schools that's affected by the proposed closures and restructuring of Pittsburgh Public Schools due to a budget deficit. Are any of the panelists optimistic about education and the place of the arts in public education? Do they think that printmaking could mobilize political action around these issues?
I would definitely say I'm optimistic. My spirit has not been broken yet. They try us a lot. They do a lot. It's been discussed in that question. But absolutely, I mean, a lot of times it's about trying to have that conversation, and printmaking, screen printing, it makes it a little bit easier to have. Actually makes it something where we can have the conversation, but we can create the conversation 25 times over, and every student can have one, and every student can take it home to their house, and then it kind of spreads out in that beautiful way. But I mean, in my own practice now, I'm actually working with a educator, Kate Owens from Hampton Schools, to essentially create a lot of the conversation we were having at Arsenal, a little bit more focused around my own work as opposed to Ricardo Ruiz's. But I believe it's why we do this. Once again, I mean, it's everything. I mean, we don't necessarily live in a market in Pittsburgh where everybody's buying artwork. People aren't necessarily knocking on all of our doors or blowing up our phones and our art manager saying, can we buy that piece, or can we do this, or we support that? But that's not why we do it. We here are as educators sharing and kind of having these conversations. So to take it to the school is kind of like the foundation. That's like, where else do you need to go? Where else are you trying to go?
Are we optimistic about the place of arts in public education? I think, and do we think printmaking can mobilize political action? So yes, printmaking can and will and always has mobilized political action. Having the opportunity to communicate your ideas and express yourself is going to touch people, and either it's going to teach them, persuade them, encourage them, find a way into their minds for them to think about it. I'm optimistic. I don't feel like I'm not optimistic. That's a good question. I think where I'm optimistic about art in schools is that I don't see teaching and education is only relegated to the building, So I'm very clear as an artist educator, as a cultural worker, that anywhere we can engage young people in general is a space for teaching, is a space for learning. So we still have libraries, we still have the streets, we do have dedicated educators who take time out of their schedule, take their resources, and try to bring us into schools as well. It's always been a resistance. It's always been a space of resistance. It's not like the school that's built to create people who conform. We're always grappling with trying to have access to it. So that's what it is. And there are people who we can work with collaboratively to bring art into the schools, but then also the work outside of the schools. The world is the classroom. We think you just put someone in a classroom and that's what they're going to learn. No, they're learning the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed. So I feel optimistic about the place of art in education, because education happens everywhere. And I know that artists, in collaboration with like artists, artivists, activists, people who care about their communities, people who are just trying to make the world better for themselves and their families, are finding each other, work together, and create the space as needed. So I see that happening all the time. So that is what makes me optimistic, because I know that no matter what, we're going to find a way to share with one another. And COVID has shown that. you know, and it's so like, you know, even amidst like very unimaginable circumstances, we find ways to share with one another. So that's what makes, you know, I know because of the legacy that we have, that it is possible, even though it's challenging, you know. So.
I think also, I think we are creating different models, you know, like you're saying. I think that's really kind of well said, and it's happening everywhere. And it is these kind of, you know, we've talked about this forever with these kind of mentorship cascades. You know, it's really about just engaging that work and kind of asking smart questions and finding ways to kind of stimulate and support voice in that, and connect these things to kind of, you know, mentorship, you know, kind of how one goes to the next, and how this is really a peer-to-peer environment that is active, that is generative, that, you know, so the kind of optimisms and kind of youth stuff, you know what I mean? And that we will kind of get to wherever. And I think that the art making part personally is part of that voice, you know what I mean? It's about the transference of knowledge. It's about this kind of material kind of getting back and forth through us, you know? So that, you know, and again, the COVID thing's creepy, you know, like there are aspects of that showing itself that in ways that we have been doing that. We have been creating these different models that are maybe more effective than some of these, you know, larger structures that we kind of think of as education, you know.
That's a great lead into what I want to say. Good. I am, I don't even know, I'm just gonna say it. I am very optimistic about what's really happening now through the quarantine, that we have to really refocus on things that we've been doing before that have really been working as artists and also as artist educators, also as systems. The education system, it's not working, hasn't been working for many decades. So putting art in education has always been hard. You know, it's like a circle and a square. Like we want to be expansive and the whole thing's closing in. I have had, at least this whole year, I've had experiences that I feel like, oh, this is changing the whole system. And so we will be more out in the streets educating. We've been doing this already, but it's just more of the focus of what school means. School was created so, you know, so kids could be in some place learning things while harvesting and all that stuff, all that history of it. It makes me think of like, you know, we're going back and forth, like there is a future of arts in human history now, not just in arts education or galleries. I think it really is this place where it might explode into being a human activity that does not get taken away from you, that you do not have to get all these degrees for, that you don't have to have a lot of expensive materials, that it doesn't, think about the monuments, that it doesn't have to do that someone supports you creating something that's about war. All the monuments have been about war, about who wins the war, who dies in the war. There's voices that are going to be heard now. And within this year, I have seen students not doing well with arts in education. And also students have been moving it out of the way to get to the arts that they want to do. And it's been a very difficult, as a teaching artist, it's been difficult for me, but it's been kind of exciting at the same time, you know, like knowing that the envelope needs to be ripped and trying to rip it while I'm in a screen, while I'm like this, while I'm here, with a student that maybe I just met, you know, and what will happen? I just read this horrible thing that I don't want to say, but anyway, it won't be the next year that we're back to normal. I actually don't want to go back to normal, you know, and it's not going to be next year that we take off our masks. So moving our creative intellect into a system that is human will probably explode the education system. There will be no more art in education. There'll be art everywhere, period. That's my thought right now.
So we have a question from Sarika that it might be a nice place to end, who asked if this is going to be an ongoing residency, and if so, what's the best way to learn more and possibly to apply for it?
I guess that's an artist image research thing. You know, we started, I kind of alluded this or mentioned earlier that the kind of larger kind of resident things that we've been doing that are, you know, kind of artists coming and going, people are busy. How do you come? We put things in motion collaboratively with younger individuals. It's supporting the mature artists, the aspiring artists. The younger artist is in the shop collaborating. The driver is in and out, back and forth. those younger artists are kind of challenged to kind of serve, to make these resources available to the community, you know, and kind of the local artists, but also to kind of educators in K-12. For us, the kind of portfolio structure helped create a different framework to be able to work with more artists at one time and get to know people, because so much of what we've been doing at the shop is you know, it takes so long to develop the relationship, to figure out whether people are working that way, whether this serves that artist and how that works. And the portfolio allows us to do that a little differently. It also allowed us to frame some kind of common threads to kind of content that opened it up for kind of teaching and for youth and just for accessibility to kind of these ideas a little bit more. And it also opened up a possibility for us in terms of kind of almost a training and a practice thing, where there were some focused, common, you know, almost technical activities in terms of producing some of this stuff. So we're trying to continue to do it. You know, we see this as, we did 6 artists. The idea was that we do, conditioning stuff is all kind of funky in this, but the setup was that we do 6, the artists get 6, we get 6, and 6 go to everybody. That after this portfolio, we do the next one, and we do 6 again, because it was a framework that worked for us a little bit. So we're trying to do it. So we're looking for funding. We're looking for ways to do it. The work that we're doing that we've mentioned a couple of times with Daryl and Boom and Beck Zalia and Quay is kind of another round of this that is kind of deeper dive, that isn't as kind of constrained by maybe some auditioning or some this or some that. But so we're already kind of rolling, and I you know, it'd be great to do this again sometime. Maybe we'll kind of try to frame something. I know Hodge is doing some stuff in Houston. There was just a show I saw, a bunch of posts from, you know, him doing Golden Cage stuff. So we've been talking about tweaking the language each time around. You know, this was, I really appreciated Beck Zalia. I think there was an awful lot of really great things that you were saying, and this kind of the referencing the Golden Cage directly, and kind of some of this kind of boutique-y, you know, kind of stuff. And there, I think that there's some relevant things. This was, the language was put together, you know, 4 years ago. You know, I mean, there are shifts in perhaps how to upgrade those prompts, but we're already talking to a number of artists to see if we can't get another round. Everything that happens at the shop comes through the info at artistimageresource.org account. And we've always kind of said that we're looking at kind of application proposal materials all the time, and then trying to chase funding, trying to find some way to kind of make that happen. So more and more, we're, you know, finding that artists are bringing some of the kind of capacity to get things moving, and we've kind of got some, you know, different abilities to do anything. So I would like to think the simple answer is yes, we will be continuing to kind of do this Golden Cage, this portfolio project in some iteration, and we're interested in, you know, I would say send something to the info account and just kind of query, let us know you're kind of thinking about work and what you're thinking about a little bit, and we can have a conversation about it.
Thank you, Bob. And I think that is our time for tonight. So I'm going to turn it back over to Anna to wrap up.
Well, thank you, everyone. What a great program, and just great to listen to you talk about your work. And I just wanted to, again, thank you for taking the time, and thanks to our audience for being with us and for asking such good questions. We will be back here again, as we said, on March 23rd, with our third Other Voices, Other Walls program, and we hope you'll join us. And I think that's it for us for tonight. Thank you to Caitlin and Aureen for leading us through the program, and have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great night. Thank you, everyone.
Coming. Thanks for being here. Thanks for inviting me. That's great.
Of course. Have a good night.
When I
Thanks,
see how hot it
guys.
is. Bye.